Good morning. So as part of our work at First Alaskans, we were joking about a strategic plan for 10,000 years. Well, we went through a strategic planning process. We wanted to organize our work in buckets that made sense to us in the way we were doing our work in 2016. One of the buckets that's very essential to our work, it's called being good relatives. And I see lots of you at lots of our events, so that's a good thing. That means you feel like you're being heard, seen, feel like family. It's with intention. You hear in many tribal communities, all my relations, right? And we wanted to start off hearing from some women that I completely adore and love. As part of our work of being good relatives, Lagunai and I were recently down in Albuquerque. We were at a Native Power Building Summit because despite some of the politics here in Alaska, there's exciting things happening in other places. Some exciting things here too, but we went down there to learn about what's happening in Indian country, to learn about the historic number of Native women, Native candidates running for office, this sweep that's come in our way, this new tide. And while we were down there, we heard from two of these incredible ladies, and we were like, we just have to have them. And they came. NaMee, we decided to host this Social Justice Doers Summit in Juneau for a reason. Because there's a lot of things happening here in our capital. We came here for you. We came here for you and you, right? We came here to hold up the work of many. And so this panel, it's meant to set us off as being good relatives. How do we show up for each other? In my mind, I thought we would put this at the end of the 2 days. But we're like, why would we wait till the end for that hotness? We reshuffled and we put it to the beginning. So, ladies, if you would just maybe briefly introduce yourself, and then we can get into some questions.
Nawaj duna dagna di nushanuna juduka na neshu da di stigs da di wanadina duna hayden zagadish nuknakswa nasanish way to go sted zagadij. My name is Prairie Seminole. I'm from the Eriksen and Northern Cheyenne tribes in western North Dakota and Montana. I'm from the Minibadi clan, which is our water buster clan, which sometimes I apologize for bringing the rain, but it's already expected here during this time of the year. So I'm sorry if we need that moisture though too. So we have a clan dedicated to protecting our water bundle and our spirits. What else did I say? I said I'm very grateful for this day to be in this room for all of us here, acknowledging our Creator and our Mother, and remembering the ways of our people. And remembering the people. It's actually remembering the way of those with flesh. So remembering our ancestors in that way. Thank you. What I do, I'm an educator, and I've traveled into different realms. Growing up, my dad is full-blood American Indian. I was almost saying American Indian Alaska Native because I'm so used to saying that in my role. Northern Cheyenne and Rikra, man with Lakota and Hidatsa in our background too. And then my mom is German-Russian from the plains of the Odessa River Valley in Russia. They met, they married, they had 6 beautiful children. My dad had 14 altogether. He was a product with the American Indian movement. He was a fighter. And my mom was living her faith in action within social justice too. It's a big deal in North Dakota to marry somebody of color, even today in 2018. And it wasn't looked upon very well. And so the communities in which we grew up as kids, as mixed blood, we grew up being made fun of. And I remember one of the words that was used is Ieska. And Ieska, now you throw it at somebody, means half-breed. But I had teachers, Mato Standing High and others who said, you know the root of that word, And where it comes from is the people who were born of mixed blood are interpreters. They're born educators. They're born in-betweeners. They're the ones who help us make sense of the worlds around us. And that comforted me. So that's become my work, whether it's fighting for rights, whether it's working in the churches, whether it's, getting a right to vote, or healthcare, or access to opportunities that have been denied us for so many years. I get within that system, and I'm an educator. So I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I didn't know I'd be crying most of the morning. Otherwise, I wouldn't have spent so much time on my eyeliner and mascara. But it's beautiful to be amongst Indigenous people. A lot of my time is amongst non-Indigenous people, becoming vulnerable and sharing the traumas of our story so that they can get it. Because we cannot forget the pain of our people, but unfortunately, without sharing the pain of our people, others will not get it. Because until they see you as human, they won't work for us. They won't be our allies. They won't advocate. So when they invited me, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be spending 2 weeks with others. And how do I bring this back? This is heartwarming for me. This is energizing. So thank you for this space and the rules and taking care of one another. Absolutely beautiful to be a part of it. Way to go, Sted. Thank you.
안녕하세요. 한국 이름이 정남이입니다. 미국 이름이 크리스티 NaMee 에릭센이에요. 한국 잘 못해서 죄송합니다. 그런데 한국 태어났어요. 주노에 살아요. 안녕하세요. I greet you in peace. My Korean name is NaMee. You can call me NaMee, like a tsunami. Yeah. Because I look like a natural disaster. Just kidding. I don't speak Korean very well, so I apologize, but I was born in Korea and I live here in Juneau. I'd like to acknowledge the Akall'eq, whose land we're currently sitting and learning and gathering on. Ginishish for the opportunity to live here, to work here, play here, thrive here, create here, be in community with others here, and certainly to speak here today. Kuyangpak, is that how you say? Kuyangpak, to First Alaskans Institute. I'm the president of their fan club. So it is an honor to do anything alongside them. So Kuyangpak. Do I also talk about me, or that's it? Or say other things? You said all the things. Okay. I was at this talk listening to Brian Stevenson speak. Are some of you familiar with his work? A lot of things Ernestine said were reminding me of some of his words. Really eloquent scholar and organizer, thinker, activist. And one thing in particular really resonated with me, which is when he suggested that perhaps the worst things that ever happened to us were not the forced labor and slavery. Perhaps it was not the removal of indigenous people from their lands and from their languages, but instead the story, the narrative that was told to justify those things, right? The story that Black people were less than human. The story that indigenous people were uncivilized, were savages, right? Because though those actions, though they were horrific, occurred and in some ways, quote unquote, ended, that story is still as strong as ever. So as an artist, I've been working at the intersection of art and activism for the last, 15 years. And I think my biggest, or what I'm most interested in, is changing that story, right? In finding ways that me as an artist, how can I use my own voice and experience to try to tell my story? And how can I also, as a teaching artist and as an organizer, help empower other people to use their gifts to tell their stories as well, so that we can change that narrative? I think there's a lot of ways that that we can change that narrative. And I believe that art, not to be an art supremacist, but I believe that art can really access something different in us. It can allow us to feel something deeper. It can elevate content in ways that are so deeply human, right? Just this morning, Ernestine's stories. I mean, who was moved by some of her stories? Ayu, in telling her experience of going through treatment and the visualization she had of her tattoo and what it would symbolize to her. For me, just watching Colleen James hug people this morning, she makes this sound when she hugs people. I'll try to do it. There's something about paying attention to our surroundings and our senses, experiencing them deeply and sharing them with others, that I think calls on something in us as humans and moves us. And as an artist, that's what drives me. That's what has moved me for the last decade or so. Anyway, 감사합니다. Gunesh Knapak, all the languages, for saying thank you for allowing me to be here today.
Yes, yeah. Hath Daditu, Theresa Sheldon, Sidsta, Clayton Teed Badat, 12 Chud Du Flalep. Good morning, everyone. My name's Theresa Sheldon from Tulalip Tribes. Me and my son, Clayton, are here. And Tulalip, we're located 35 miles north of Seattle. And now with traffic is 2 hours away from Seattle. And it's just an honor and privilege to be here and to share with you all. It was interesting, and I'm so grateful for the invite to be here. My brother-in-law, his parents are from Akall'eq. And so my niece, it's great to be in their territory, David Perrin and Joanne and John Perrin. And through Facebook, we've already had invites to take us to the tram tonight of people that don't even know us, but that's just how we are as Indigenous people. And they reached out, and Joanne said, "Oh, here's my relatives, and they'll take care of you." And that just way of being, of the spirit of who we are, is absolutely beautiful. And this has been the most impressive conference I've attended, and same with Prairie Rose, of not expecting to cry so much and be touched so quickly, so fast, in such a good way, is just astonishing, and it really speaks to the work that you are all doing. My day job is a political consultant with Emily's List, and we're trying to get more Native American female to run for office. And so anyone who's interested in running for office, please give me your card, because we need you.
There's at least 50 here in the room.
Right. And President Peterson said it so well: when we have to be able to see ourselves across the table. It's one thing to do consultation, government to government, and be change agents. It's another to step into that rightful leadership role as we as Indigenous women belong. And so any way we can help, please let me know. And I'm glad to be able to do that. Prior to this, and I'm freshly in this role a month, so it's really interesting, but prior I was elected to our Tulalip Tribal Council for 2 terms, served in our governmental affairs as our policy analyst for 7 years before that. And but the most honorable role I have is just being a mother and an auntie. And I've spent the last year working on self-care, like actually intentional self-care, trying to figure out how, if my son needs therapy, that it not be because of me. You know, I mean, that is a parent goal. And so I just really have been intentional about it and talking about it, because sometimes we think the traumas we carry void us out from being the professionals that we're born to be. And we can't change the way we were born. We can't change the family we come from. We can't change the fact that my mother is a struggling addict and still has a hard time with these things. And but what we can change is that's not mine to carry. And that dysfunction and the trauma and abuses isn't mine to live out. And so as an adult, being intentional about that, being intentional about the words we use. And I just have to acknowledge and say thank you for last night's presentation and the empowerment. I've been doing policy and government work for a decade, and to hear a governor speak the way he spoke yesterday it really touched my heart. And I've heard lots of governors speak, and you're just like, get it over with, you know. But last night touched the core of who we are as Indigenous people, and acknowledging the languages and acknowledging that the government is responsible for what they have done. And the government is liable and needs to put money in changing it and correcting it. That's power. And I've also, and I know I'm taking way longer than I should, and I apologize, but I just really have to say, since 2012, I've been an advocate for the violence against women. And I was the staffer to Deborah Parker Sitsaeltsa, who's just an absolute warrior in all sense of warriorness. And since then, 2012, we've been all across the nation asking, where's our warriors? Asking, why must it be the women who stand up as victims and say, stop victimizing me, stop prosecuting me, stop victim blaming me? And it's really angers me that it's constantly us marching out there, doing these things, holding these things, organizing. And last night, to have the men stand around us and to have the words shared of we apologize and we thank you, women, for not giving up on us. And we want you to physically see the strength and love that we're going to give you. Melted just touched me in a way that I didn't even know I needed. And so I just want to say thank you, because if I wasn't in that room last night, I wouldn't have been able to have that blessing and wouldn't have been able to feel the strength and warriorness of it. And I didn't even know how much it was needed. And so I just want to say Tigwid Seed ACM for providing that last night. And I was like, that is what we need, that togetherness. Because it's not about one or the other, but it's about balance and standing together with our sisters and brothers and united in the no more, we're not going to tolerate it. And so it was absolute beautiful, and I'm just so thankful to have witnessed it and say that change is occurring, and I just didn't expect it to come from Alaska. And I am so thankful that it is happening here. So ASM just Tigwid Seed for that.
All right, well, thank you for sharing a little bit about what moves you. I was interested in hearing about how you learned to be a good relative. How did you learn to be a good relative in the so many struggles and movements and things that are going on in this world? So we can share a little bit of insight and some knowledge on how others can be good relatives for us.
Not from my family. I'm just kidding. Well, like many, Native families, we have our traumas, and I think it was I was sent off to boarding school, the first and still remaining egg school that was built by the BIA or Department of Agriculture. An act of Congress created this school in North Dakota, and I was sent there. And it was like a little sweatshop, like for us kids, and it was abusive. But the second year I was there, two elder women had come in, one from Siston, one from Red Lake, Minnesota, Siston Wahpeton of North Dakota and South Dakota, Pansy and Lois. And these grandmas, I think in the style of, the discipline that they received at school, like, you're getting up at 4 a.m., you're going to help us with these ceremonies. I was like, okay, you're voluntold to do these things, right? And I come from a family where my dad made us go and wash everybody's dishes when we visited, because there's 6 of us kids, 8, usually 8 to 10 in the family coming to visit. So we brought food and we, would clean up after ourselves. But being sent to boarding school at a time when our family was going through some dysfunction, it was these grandmas, and I think back at those lessons all the time. I didn't want to get up at 4 in the morning. I didn't want to get the fire prepared for these ceremonies that we were doing. And I did it because I was told to do it. And that time alone, away from the chaos of the school, from the chaos of my brothers and sisters that were there, I had time to reflect on what I was going through in my own life. And when Lois and Pansy would come and, check in on me and, start talking to me about my family and things that I was going through, I didn't know what I was going through at the time because I never had time to process it. Oh. And so as a teenager now, thinking back at just checking in with myself and asking, how are you doing? What's happening around you? And then going into prayer, going into ceremony, that was modeled to me long before I realized how important it was. And so years later into thinking about how we check in with ourselves, it wasn't necessarily like the white therapist I ended up going to after my dad passed away, but it was remembering those grandmas just kind of checking in with me and making sure I had something to do and, giving me space to reflect on time and, what the day ahead was. And when Pansy passed away, Lois had called me, and it was this car ride, and Lois is still alive today. She has children my age, and we rode out to Red Lake, and she remembers all the things that I used to talk about when I was getting those fires ready and, in that little space before the sun comes up and the stars are still out, cool weather, fog coming in. I remembered that. I never remembered what I talked about. And so 20 years later, when this older woman, this elder in my life, was reflecting back on the things that I would say to her, it was powerful to be reminded of, geez, I'm this, 12-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old girl coming into my own age and being reminded that I was talking about how we need to change the system at the school, how it's abusive, how, my own family, we don't know how to deal with, alcoholism and the drug addiction and the violence that we're experiencing. And, I've forgotten all of that. I just completely blacked it out until Lois reminded me, and she goes, you're the only one in your family who's been sober. You're the only one in your family who's tried to change these systems. And you're the only one in your family who took the language and did the ceremonies. And I didn't see that. Again, how we block things out. I just saw Lois a few weeks ago, right before Albuquerque, actually. And she's like, how are you doing, my girl? So even though I didn't learn necessarily how to be a good relative, from my own family, it was the sisterhood, it was the motherhood, the aunties and the grandmas out there who just paid attention to this little girl. Changed my whole life. So, thank you. Because now I see that those little interactions they may not be important at that time. But if I can remember, if I can hold on to those experiences and bring them back, call back on them, it's transformation. Transforming this trauma before I transfer it to the next generations. So.
That's deep. Yeah. Thank you. Do you want to talk? So you don't have to go last.
Yeah. I just think Prairie Rose opens it up. You know, I was an absolute angry, mean girl, and I embraced that anger. That anger was like, this is who I am. I was like, rah, all the time, right? And I didn't realize that was trauma. I didn't realize that I was carrying was generational trauma. And I was in a federal Indian law and policy class in my undergrad, and I started learning about federal Indian policy, going, are you kidding me? The United States government created laws for 300 years that dictated our lives, right? And in that moment, I understood my grandma. I understood why she was broken, and she was so mean, and like she wasn't the grandma you wanted to hug, right? And I'm a hugger, and they'd be like, give your grandma a hug, and I'm like, And so I had the examples, you know, like Prairie Rose of what not to be. And they were my aunties and uncles and my grandmother, and it's really hard to envision yourself doing better when you don't see it and you don't have those examples. And so when I went to college and I was by myself, and I was like, why aren't we learning this? What do you mean there's a Citizenship Act of 1924? You know, all of these things. And I was like, why aren't we being taught this? And then my anger shifted, right? And I was angry at my tribe because I grew up on the reservation. How come you didn't teach me this? Why didn't you teach me all of these laws that have dictated my life up until this point? And this world of policy came open to me, and I was like, what? This is how you make change? This is, okay, I got to get involved in that. And then I super got nerdy into changing laws, and people are like, that's an act of Congress. I'm like, my whole life has been an act of Congress, and I want to say, you know, I want to be involved in that choice. And so when making systematic changes, who's it benefiting? It's never benefited us. We have never been. And so just like the rhetoric of who created the bucket, well, who made these laws and why? And I don't need to preach to the choir because Alaska knows that the laws have been absolutely inhumane to the Alaska Native people, which is unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. And so creating those changes, yeah, it's a big deal, but can they be done? Absolutely, because they were done to us. And now it's our opportunity to change them for us. And that's the systematic changes that we're going through. And so being a good relative has been a lifelong learning process. And I'm not at the best person I can be. I'm a work of progress, right? And so every morning I get to wake up and make that choice of who am I going to be? Am I going to be that snarky person who is negative and doesn't see the positive light or opportunity? Or am I going to be the person who says, okay, I'm going to be present in this moment? And as a single parent, we go through that single parent guilt of trying to justify being a workaholic because we understand the pressures of systematic change, and then trying to understand that balance of being a good mother. And so going from being elected to now not, I'm having to live with my consequences of that guilty parenting. Of it was a lot easier to buy my son the nice toy and give in to him, and so he entertains himself, and so that I don't have to be emotionally available. And that emotional availability is where we lose moments of teachings and we lose moments of connecting, because I just can't be there right now. And so it's super easy to give in and say, here, have the best of the best, because, you know, as a poverty mindset, I didn't have that. And so we put those issues into our kids without even realizing. And so now I'm being conscious and going, dang it, How can I be better? And it's a slow progress. But the beautiful thing is every day is a new opportunity. And yesterday I may have missed that teaching moment with him because I was just like, forget it. But today I can say, okay, time out, let's talk about it and let's be there. And I think that's the beautiful part of life. The more we learn and then come to things like this, that gives us new tools. Because so many of us don't have the tools. We have the spirit and we know what needs to be done. We're just not sure how to get there. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the work Andrea and Liz and all of you guys are doing is giving us the tools to help be a better relative.
Thank you for that, both of you, in talking about, boy, I feel like really seen. I feel a little called out with your last one. The idea of being a good relative to others, having to be a good relative to yourself first, I think is a really powerful thought that I'm going to think about more. So, 감사합니다. I don't know if this exactly answers the question, but it called to mind a story that my advisor in college told me. What's that, 13 years ago? Dr. Earl Schwartz. I studied social justice, so he was my social justice advisor. And he told the story about these babies in a river. Have you already heard this story? No. No? Okay. He tells a story where this guy goes down to a river, and he's at the river, and then this baby comes floating down, and he's like, oh no, a baby in the river. And so he goes up and he grabs the baby, and the baby's cold, and so he's like trying to warm up the baby, and he's just about to leave to go get the baby help when another baby comes down the river. And he's like, 2 babies, And so he, with the other arm, he picks up the baby, and now he's got 2 babies in his arms, and he's gotta get these babies help. They're cold, they're like near drowned, and he's on his way to leave when another baby comes down the river. And so he has to ask himself, what's he gonna do? Is he going to grab this baby and head towards to get help for the babies, knowing that there's a high likelihood that there are more babies coming down the river, right? He sees the pattern. So he can take the babies and get help, or he could walk up the river and find out why the hell are there babies coming down the river, right? And try to fix that. And Dr. Schwartz talked about it as social justice having 2 feet. That one foot needs to take care, a lot of that direct service that we see. How do we care for people in the here and now and deal with the trauma of having just gone down a river, right, as a baby or whatever? And also the foot of needing to walk forward and find the source and fix a problem, right? Some of the policy angles. And the idea that both feet need to be moving, right? You couldn't just hop along trying to do one of those. So for me, when I think about being good relatives in the movement, I'm so aware of the many feet that it takes. I think he was wrong in only naming 2 feet. Those babies, boy, now they need counseling, and then they're gonna need a way to get back up and get to other rivers, There's like prevention work that needs to occur, so that whatever was happening with the river, certainly policy change is a piece of it. You need the artists, to help tell the story. I think there's a lot of feet to fix the baby and the river problem, and I can only be one of them. I can only walk my path, and I have to count on many people walking alongside me, towards our end game, towards our vision, and finding ways to not shame others if they can't join me in the path I'm on, and also how can I lift up, empower, support, encourage people to use whatever gift they've been given to move their feet towards that goal too. 감사합니다.
Beautiful. Profound, ladies. So in this work, I've heard paradigm shift mentioned a couple times already today. And my sister Ayu, we love her motions and movements and stuff. And so in our dialogue work, she says, sometimes, you walk in the room and you only have your perspective, right? You're kind of looking around the world and you're just looking at the world through your lens. And in our work, through dialogue and through sharing our story, connecting to hearts and minds, your horizon starts to open up and your perspective starts to change. And the allies show up, right? This is mixed company. It's beautiful to see all the faces, all the colors in this room. And so this question is about activating. When allies are ready to show up, how do we push them out of their comfort zones so that they can use their power and privilege in a way that we need? In a way that we need to advance social justice. Because if we continue to move at the pace of comfort, we know where that road goes. We know what that gets us. And so we need to be pushing, right? But we need to push in a way that doesn't push people farther, right? And so I'm curious to know, how have you been able to push allies out of their comfort zone so that they can show up in the way we need, not necessarily in the way that they personally feel we need, right? In the ways that we truly need.
To be honest, I have not had a lot of success pushing allies. They really like to be pulled in, I think. For me, I'm speaking from the experience of having tried. And so I'm not suggesting this is the best way, but for me, and perhaps this has a little bit to do with emotional safety, I don't push allies much. I try to find ways that we can come together, that we can pull in with one another, over, a variety of mediums, and then you can kind of nudge, maybe, but and so I don't know if that derails the question, but for me, I think it's something I think about often, which is that possible to push allies? Or do allies have to push themselves with each other? I'll push on, fellow Asian women. I'll sit with them for hours and hours and discuss a thing, until, I'll go the long mile. I'll be heartbroken and still trust them and come back to them. And really, to solidify a relationship with them can have its challenges, but is always worth it to me, because I see the fruits of growth and the solidarity that I can trust, But I've been hurt by a lot of allies. So I don't know that I push them.
I've jumped into that abyss of challenges, right? The one where it gets a little overwhelming when you're at the bottom and you feel all this pressure. How do you get out? But I found the hole in the bucket that is being held by the people who've made that bucket. And I share our narratives, I tell our stories, I share our pain, and I share my own pain. I feel like when there's a willingness and frustration in the landscape of seeing oppressed peoples being oppressed and continue to be oppressed, I I've been given tools, and those tools are our stories. And the ways of our people can show the rest of the world how to be peaceful, how to build relationship, how to make right relationships. And it isn't easy work. Because to ask then my Indigenous brothers and sisters to also share in that work, to share in that labor, share in that emotional labor, that vulnerability, it's really difficult. I've made that space in my own life to be that teacher for a little while. I won't be able to do it forever. It's painful. It's hard to get out. I get blind to, okay, what are my emotional needs right now? How do I check in with myself? I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to be social anymore. Theresa, last night, get up and dance. I don't know how to dance. Just do what they're doing, right? They want us out by 7, though. Already making excuses. I'm not even from here. But I've jumped into those spaces, you know. I used to say, you know, I'm that innovative technology that's gone into laser out the cancer, right? And then I made friends with people who are strong believers of that faith in cancer and of that culture, and they didn't know that they were cancer, and so I don't use that language much anymore because they didn't know. They just thought they were doing the right thing, right? And so how did I get away? My next question was, how do I get away from that then blaming and shaming of the others who didn't know that they're perpetuating the system of caging our people? It's not easy work. You have to make people uncomfortable because truth is uncomfortable, but truth is too valuable to lose in this path, in this journey. I don't think that I'm always right in what I do or say, but if I can move people to then write a letter to save Bears Ears, contact your congressman to, you know, not say yes to Kavanaugh, right? I mean, it's those little things that say, we built a relationship now where when I speak of my pain, you believe me. I hand out materials about percentages of Indigenous people, American Indian, Alaska Native, suicides or domestic violence or whatever trauma is happening in our communities. And I get people who say, well, that's not right. Yep. That can't be true. So they try to dismiss it already. So go do your own research. Share in the emotional labor. Find the truth yourself. Through some of that work, I found that my numbers are outdated, you know? Through some of that work, I find stronger allies because they said my land in Nebraska came from the treaties that took it from the Pawnee, and that last treaty that took the land from the Pawnee that allowed my ancestors to homestead here, it said they will forever in perpetuity take the children of the Pawnee and put them in mission schools. When you're there finding out the truth of this history, because Indigenous history is American history. We are one and the same. If you love this country, you love the Indigenous people. And if you're not learning our shared history, because history didn't start when the white people came. We knew these lands, right? But we're always needing that other to affirm our knowledge already. It's pushing them in a comforting way. And maybe I'm too diplomatic in how I do it, but I also do it that way because my culture says we all need healing. And so don't hit them over the head. Be gentle. Share the truth. But I appreciate those who are, you know, the ones who are carrying the big boards of truth. I'm totally appreciative of that. I know that my place isn't necessarily that person all the time, but I'll show up, you know, when I need to. And but for now, I'm going to keep using those kind of gentle practices because we're all needed in whatever way, whatever role we find ourselves in. We're all needed. But yeah, I've jumped into the spaces that are typically leaving us behind, but they don't know that they're leaving us behind. And we don't know that we're being left behind often. So I'm trying to do the work there for as long as I can, and not necessarily for the income, because that's not there either, but it's for the outcome. You know, it's so that my nieces and nephews and hopefully my own children someday will grow up in a world that's better for them, and they can be whoever they are, however they want to be, and know that they're loved.
In 2018, I think we have to get over the stop apologizing. And so we, as Indigenous people, need to stop apologizing for the truths we say. Because we didn't do it. I know you didn't do it. But we have a say in what changes. And so we absolutely need allies. We need every single human being to understand the struggles and the fights and the language that needs to go forward. We can't do it alone. We're really good at talking to ourselves and empowering ourselves and telling our stories to ourselves. But if that message never leaves us, it won't make change. We have to be able to build allies, and it's relationship building. And it is not comfortable when you step out. In 2012, we went to Don Young's office and talked to Chris Fleur. And we told him the statistics of Native women being sexually abused by non-Indian men. And he straight said, I don't believe you. He said, I do not believe white men are sexually abusing Native women. And and thank God we had our amazing judge, Theresa, who was there, because my res instincts kick into, like, I'm going to beat her, you know. I go there really quick. And we had to explain to him that non-Indian meant every single human being that isn't enrolled in a tribe. And so when we explain non-Indian means Black, Hispanic, Asian, anything that is not enrolled, then he goes, oh, okay. So it was okay if it was other brown men, but it can't be white men who are assaulting our Indian women. And at the time, we didn't have the DOJ study. The DOJ study came out a couple years later that said 84% of Alaska Native women. And now I think President Peterson said 96%, 94% is the last study showing of women being assaulted. And so we're challenging this idea of there's no way. And so we know the correct history is not being told. And so we know we're challenging people's mindsets that are just blowing them away. And so I was watching Trevor Noah this morning, and he had two reformed white nationalists on his show. And they were saying the biggest voice to speak on racism is white people. We need more white people to challenge white people, because a woman of color who's challenging a racist is not even on the same equal in their mind. It has to be white people challenging this rhetoric of racism, this rhetoric of that we're not equal human beings. And it goes into the same thing of words are powerful. Michael Bennett just wrote a book, The Things That Make White People Feel Uncomfortable. So it's an amazing book. Talks about food sovereignty, everything. I highly recommend reading it. But it talks about the power of language. And so we, as Indigenous people, if we start embracing the word savage, if we start embracing the words redskin, and we start embracing these things and giving them power, it's ridiculous. Like, it shouldn't be. We should actually be making those words so uncomfortable that when someone is saying them, it is devastating and disgusting that you would even dare say that word out loud. Because he puts a whole chapter to the N-word and saying we have to stop giving it power and call it out for what it is, because there's elders, when they hear those words being said, they fear for their lives. Because those words are meant to dehumanize you and make it okay that you can be killed and it won't matter. And so when we make the hip t-shirts and we make these things and we're going to embrace the words, don't embrace those. Stop them. Call it out. Is it annoying? Heck yeah. Who has time to like correct someone when you're in Starbucks line and somebody's saying something inappropriate and saying, hey, excuse me, we don't talk that way. It's 2018. Stop it. And that is the building the allies. And is it comfortable? No, absolutely not. But it's necessary. And so when we're challenging, when we're talking to young people too, giving them correct knowledge. We have to educate our children. 3rd grade, they're highly capable of learning what our tribal treaties are, what executive orders are, what tribal jurisdiction, sovereignty. They're highly capable at 3rd grade. That's when we have to start the conversations to changing allies. And the thing is, calling our allies to speak on the issues. Because if there's discrepancies in the laws and the things that are happening to us as Native people, other people have to speak up and say, yeah, we agree. The same thing with when we are seeing our indigenous children from South America be put in cages. We as Native people should be up in arms over it. We should be joining forces with our Hispanic and Latino communities saying, hell no. It is unacceptable to put a child in a cage and lock them up. They're indigenous to this land. And how dare we accept if they're illegal or not? They are a human being, and it is 2018. And so we can't think those aren't our issues, because they are our issues. Those are our children who will forever be changed, because we know, because some of us are 2-3 generations of boarding school, and we know the damage we still carry, and those children will carry that. And so that's crossing through too as Native people of taking on those other issues that matter, because we know and we have lived that, and it's unacceptable to say it's okay to do that today. Unacceptable.
Just to add how important that language is. I mean, on one hand, the tools that we use, 3rd graders, totally the appropriate age. That's the tools they used on us to teach us that it wasn't okay to be Indian, right? They took our pre-verbal children away. They took our children away and blocked them off from the older generation so they wouldn't know who they were, their identity, right? And when I say tribe in the lower states, where I'm from, you know, I refer to people, right? When I do the work that I do with non-Native people, they don't think of people when they hear the word tribe, right? It's like, what do you think of? Something long ago, something, you know, that they're not currently in existence, right? I mean, 40% of Americans don't believe indigenous people even exist in this country, right? Our people were weaponized against us when the boarding school era was started. I mean, that was in the 1820s, federally funded by the 1860s, 360 federally funded boarding schools to strip us away of our identity. Never once saying there was an alternative, right? And the people working at those schools, never once thinking that they had an alternative to say no, or that this was wrong. They witnessed all of that. There's descendants of those people still here. And they don't know that they can question because of the default of leadership styles that we have in play. They can't think of an alternative future because they keep defaulting to the same leadership styles and models that we've been given. That's where we have to take those risks with our allies. Saying, well, stop thinking like that. We don't know the alternative because you keep putting in the same line item and leaders and budgets. You know, you come into our meeting and say, this is our timeline, this is our budget, this is, you know, the positions we have to fill. Mm-hmm. No, we don't. Stop it. We have to give not only ourselves permission to think of that alternative future for the next 10,000 years, just taking those risks. It might not work for the next 2 years, but maybe for the next 400 it will, right? But the risks we have to take and the language that we use are incredibly important. And the authorization to take those risks and to change that language, not just for us, but for the allies, we have to do that too.
Say one more thing. I just want to say one more thing, because when I think about allies, also, I actually think often about something that Liz. Oh no, I was like, I wrote it down. Lagunai, something Lagunai said when I was on a phone call with her years ago, and she said. And it was referring to like, how do you get certain type of people at the table, right? Which is maybe the ones that you're trying to push out of their comfort zone. And she said, they say we're preaching to the choir, but I'm gonna build a big choir. And I loved that, because maybe for someone who is like, you know, you feel the pressure to sing your song at Starbucks, you know, like you shouldn't have said that or whatever, at the dinner table, or, you know, a gazillion places a day where you want to feed, you know, fuel the resistance, and you want to gather more allies who you've never met but think they should be in your movement. That statement comforted me, because it told me I don't always have to do that. Sometimes I could just sing my song, and whoever wants to sing my song with me will join me in that song. And soon that song will just be so loud that the people who never wanted to hear it, they'll be walking around and it'll be stuck in their head, you know? And for me, that's been a healthy way for me to try to temper or to understand my relationship with wanting to push or pull allies. What song am I singing? Who is going to sing it with me? What relatives will sing this song alongside me? So that it becomes so powerful and so loud, everyone can't help but join in.
So sometimes we become too fatigued or overcommitted due to the swath and magnitude of urgent issues, right? Needing what feels like 100% of our time, energy, and effort. And so my question is, how do we save space for us? Share how you keep your fire lit without burning out or burning others. Right? We talk a lot about the fire. And fire's good, but fire can be dangerous, and it can be isolating. And so I heard you talk about self-care, right? This ties to that. And it ties to what we heard a little bit about yesterday with Lieutenant Governor Byron Malott talking about the embers and the fire being spread out and those embers that live within us. So how do you keep your fire lit without getting burned out or burning others?
I can, but you can.
Saying no. Like, giving yourself permission to not take on every issue is hard. And especially when you know what should be happening, but you don't see it. And so then you think, well, then you're obligated. And giving yourself a day off. And sometimes we have a thing, call it Lazy Sunday. And so Sunday we love not really doing anything and Netflixing or whatever it be, right? And then you go on Facebook and you see, oh, there was a march and there's all this stuff and you missed it. And then you feel guilty because, I should have went and I had my banner ready and I didn't go. And it's okay. Like, it's actually okay to take time for yourself, because there's just literally so many issues. If you went issue by issue, you can't do it. And those who can, are amazing. I absolutely applaud you for being there and knowing when to show up and knowing when to take time for yourself. Last year, I created a self-care plan intentionally because I was a grumpy monster. And I didn't like who I was anymore, and I was closed down, just no energy. And people always wanted, because they come for you and they're, oh, I need you on this, I need you on that, I need you this, and you're like, okay. But then you show up and you're empty, and you show up and you're just like dreading that you're there, and you're watching the clock, and you're just like, God, is this almost over? And it was challenging this morning because when we went off schedule, I was like, oh, what are they doing? We're off schedule. We're not sticking to the timeline, because that's my rigorous policy part, right? And what does that mean? Oh, no.
Hey,
how
we
are
got 10,000 years.
Right?
We're good. We're
I'm
good.
like, are we going to go till 8 o'clock tonight? And you start doing all that. And then you realize, let it go. Like, let the schedule go. And when we live so rigorous to the schedule, we miss opportunities. And so if you're constantly scheduled from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and you don't allow yourself to stop in the hallway and have that conversation that you may needed that entire day, we lose it. And sometimes the most beautiful thing about us is our ability to go with what we feel. And say, I don't know why I need to be here, but I need to go over to this. And you don't have a reason or why, but you just have this feeling that's telling you need to be there. And then you get there and you're like, what am I doing? I got stuff to do, but I just have this calling. I need to be here. And then someone walks in the door and you have this conversation with them and you're like, that's what I needed. I needed that moment. But if we're so sucked to our schedules, we don't get to have those moments. And I think as Native people, we're so in tune with energy. And when we quit allowing our energy to flow and we quit allowing it, we break down who we are and we miss the signs. That story of the alchemist. And we miss what the birds are telling us, and we miss what the Mother Earth is telling us because we have deadlines and we have things. And so I struggle because working for a government, you have to be in your cubicle from this time to this time, and no one really cares the work produced as long as you're physically in your cubicle. Which, I just don't get it, right? And so it doesn't matter if I'm YouTubing or Facebooking in my cubicle. It's about me being in the cubicle. It's which is a power trip. And we got to work through our trauma in government. And so it's this cycle. And I used to sit in the parking lot at work, and I would dread going in, right? And I'd sit in the parking lot and I'd give myself my pep talk. Come on, we're gonna go to work. We're gonna do some good work. We're gonna stay focused. And right, and then I'd make myself late because I'm sitting in the car, right? And then I'd get in trouble. Teresa, you can't be coming at 9:20. And I'm like, oh God. And we get so stuck on this, having to clock in at 9 o'clock. And I said, this work is not conducive to the spirit of who I am. And they're like, what? And I realized I've been parking at a cedar tree. So every morning I was talking to the cedar tree without even realizing I was doing it. Because my subconscious and my spirit was telling me I needed that. And I was taking that time in the morning, which was making me late. And so, but you don't even realize, our spirit is doing stuff for us if we just pause for a minute and, allow and take care of ourselves. We can be a whole person. And that just, I was like, man, this whole 9 to 5 thing, we got to get rid of it. We got to figure out a better way to function in society because it is not conducive to our spirit. Just saying. So if you're in a place where you can make alternative scheduling for your employees and flex hours, do it because we need it. And we don't even know we need it because we will just do what we're told without challenging the system. And so if you don't need to have your person physically in a cubicle, don't make them be there. Figure out how to change that. Seriously, as employers, figure out what works for your employees and make it acceptable, make it flexible, and do that because that contributes back to the spirit of how you stay well in your workplace. And if your employee is just dreading coming in, even though you're doing good work, right? Good work's happening, but you're just like, you're not going to get the best out of me because I'm going, And however that looks, be it if your policy that allows volunteer time, your policy HR allows you to go into a school and volunteer for 4 hours a week. Make those changes to what your employee needs, because policy is meant to be flexible and change. And so don't be so caught into this is the way it's done, because that is a colonialized way of doing it. Like, we're going to change it today to meet the needs of what we have to do.
Okay, I have two things to say, and I think they're actually related, but here we go. One is, yes, get comfortable with saying no. And I said that for a long time to myself, and I think actually it was not a useful strategy to me until I started thinking, also say yes to me. Yeah. Like, it was like, okay, maybe I could say no, I couldn't. But then when I started thinking that every time I said yes to something else, it was saying no to me, it was saying no to my family, it was saying no to my gifts. That was different. So yeah, say no to others, to some obligations, but I really want to challenge people to think about what is your particular gift? What do you bring to this movement? What is your foot, right? If I were to call on the story of Dr. Schwartz earlier, and then say yes to that and be comfortable with that. On the morning that we prepped for this conversation, I was like feeling really overwhelmed because I was like, I think the world hates women today. You know, it was Trump he just couldn't resist any further, and he had tweeted something, and we had just gotten the news of the judge letting that one guy basically free. I saw a woman, what's her name, Laura Cruz? Is she in the room? Hi, Laura. I really appreciated your really big rundown of what people in Alaska could do if they were upset at that verdict. Also, read that list before I had coffee, was very overwhelmed. And I was like, oh my gosh, my list of things to do today just doubled because I cared about that verdict. I was angry. I wanted to do something, quote unquote. And I saw Laura's list of things to do, and I was like, I would do those, and I was gonna do it. But really what I wanted to do is I wanted to write, because I'm a writer, And I just thought about what story could I tell? If that was going to take an hour, should I not maybe just take an hour to write? And I have so much appreciation for the artist who did this piece here, because when she posted it or when she shared it, she said something like, I'm just trying to respond the best way I know how. And that really resonated for me, right? The way we each show up to this movement will look different. Sometimes it will look like that list. And sometimes your gift may be something different. And how can you say yes to that and not feel ashamed about it? Sorry, so that was point one. Point two is that a couple years ago, I had a stomach ache. And the stomach ache lasted for a really long time, like months. And I would go to the doctor and I would be like, oh, my stomach hurts. And they would look, and they were like, oh, they told me I had an ulcer at first. Anyway, long story short, by the time I got to the hospital, my appendix had been burst for 3 days. And they were like, wow, you must be in a lot of pain. And I was like, I am, yeah. This is not funny. I was joking with the nurse, and it was excruciating to even tap my abdomen. And I heard the nurses all talk about what a high pain tolerance I had, which I wore a little bit as a badge of honor for a while, until one of my friends texted me like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened to you. And she said, you are so used to enduring. Stop it. And then the idea of a high pain tolerance for me became this metaphor for the ways that, I, and certainly probably many of you in the room, are so used to enduring. And so in what ways in social justice, too, can we ask ourselves to just stop it, right? Before your insides explode, right? Is that in and of itself an act of justice, an act of decolonization, to take very good care of yourself and not endure, the burdens that are on you? Thank you.
it's very true. Our bodies will tell us, hey, pay attention to me, when we don't for a while. Thank you for sharing that. What was the question again?
How do you keep your fire lit without
Yes.
burning others?
How do you keep your fire lit without burning yourself out or burning others? I used to be really good at that, actually, because I worked in social justice, but more as a social worker within social justice. And I made the time for our ceremonies. I made time for my family. I made time for my dogs. Like, through that was making time for me. And I was very specific, all right, my employer, I'm going to work for you. I love this work. But every summer I'm taking a month and a half off. That's just working that into my schedule. Those are my ceremonies. Those are our gathering days. Those are our, we're taking time for this. And then my life sort of fell apart with my partner, and we'd been, ride or die for years, grew up together, and took a while to get together, but we got together eventually, and his life fell apart, and how he coped with it, I felt I had to fix it, and couldn't fix it, to a point where he decided it was better to end his life than move forward with us. And the truth and the pain of that, he's still alive, fortunately. I found him in time. And even that's traumatizing. Mm-hmm. I decided that, I'm going to fix what I can. And I jumped into the world of social justice and fighting and fixing and fighting and fixing and fighting and getting people into that without ever giving myself space to heal from what we just went through together. Because my community goes through that all the time. How many of us have been touched by somebody choosing out, right? And to me, I said, all right, I'm going to use that narrative to keep fighting so that we don't have that narrative anymore. But it's not working. The things I'm doing, the children in my community are still looking at leaving us. And it was physical pain that led me to finally say, okay, I need some space. I need to figure this out. And I had to go through that pain. I had to share that pain before I could say, all right, I'm ready to fight again. So our bodies, they do tell us that we need to take that space. And we shouldn't do it alone. And as much as I travel now into indigenous communities, there's sometimes I need to just say out loud, I've got this pain, and I need your prayers. I need community right now. I know I'm not from here, but I need community. A year ago, I was in Shishmaref, Alaska, actually. Yeah, my first time out here in this countries, and we had just lost my nephew. And a father was telling a story about how he had lost his son about a year before that. And that pain was just really with me too. And we're with the few white people that were in Shishmaref who have a lot of authority there. And they were sticking us to the agenda, making sure that we're on that agenda. And finally, I thought, if nobody says anything, we're not going to take the space we need to just kind of take a moment to pray with each other, sing with each other, whatever we need to do at that time. And I said, I have the authority. I had to remind myself I have the authority to make space in this agenda. This meeting was set up for me. We were checking in with the community, and it was, the pain that was there, that I was feeling from my own loss, and that this father was sharing with his loss. And I just said, we never get out of this, And So we broke the agenda. Actually, honestly, I don't think we ever went back to it, actually. And took the space just to pray and to be with one another, and that's up to us. We have to make that space. We have to claim it. Because if we don't, we will burn out. Our fire will burn out. But by connecting at those little moments where just the embers were alive in us, me on that day, this father on that day, the community on that day, feeling the pain of all that had happened, because it's you guys, you know that Shishramap's a small community, and people were dealing with a lot of pain. And but just coming together, making that space, all of our embers got together. You know, we warmed each other. And being a stranger in these lands, and the hospitality and the comfort that I got from the community in Shishmaref, and those. I wouldn't call them elders yet, because they didn't call themselves elders. But where I'm from, when our people are dying in their 50s, you know, and these to me, they were elders because they were in their 60s, but they were kind of the youth group, right? So a blessing to long lives for all of us. And I prayed for that, you know. And we prayed for that together. May our children grow up. May they grow up without pain. May they grow up to complain about their grandchildren, right? As simple as that was, it meant the world. And so claiming that space, claiming that time, we have to do that for ourselves. And so I'm much better at just, you know, acknowledging my relatives, wherever I am in my travels. And even if I'm just the passenger, I'm just sitting and I'm like, oh, there's a coyote. Oh, there's a porcupine in the tree. Oh, there's a deer running. Oh, there's a hawk flying. You know, even just simple things like that. I think the people think I'm childish, but I hold on to it because that's comforting to me. I'm just gonna be who I am, you know? That radical act of self-love. I've committed to this work. I know the pain of it. I know that I've given myself a deadline, and so I'm just going to be who I am, and no apologies for who I am, right? For all of us, don't ever apologize again for who you are, because we are who we are, and we are enough, and we are worth fighting for.
Okay, I just have one more question, even though I want to keep going and going and going. I'm curious, who is your squad? Who is your social justice hustle family that has your back? And how do we become a part of it?
Just a preface to my answer would be that this question, or the idea of a squad, came out of this event I organized with my friend Melissa 2-3 years ago, after the shootings of Philando Castile and Alton Sterling. And after those occurred, I went into this like depression. I felt about it, and then I wrote about it. And then the third step usually for me is organize about it. But I was still like so stuck in like feelings and writing and feelings and writing that I knew I needed help, that I wouldn't be able to do it on my own. So at that time, everybody was doing hashtag squad goals. Do you remember that? It's not cool anymore, huh? Yeah. Anyway, I remember making a list that was like squad. Like I wanted to just have some squad goals and realize them. And, you know, I put people like Colleen out at the university on it, you know, Phil Campbell over at the Northern Lights Church, who's a big activist and important leader in the faith community. Of course, all of our cultural organizations, Black Lives Matter, the Black Awareness Association, and Filipino cultural groups, and I don't need to make you a laundry list of my own squad list. More so, I wanted to just suggest it as a call to action, because making that squad list is what made the event happen. Because I could look at each of them and I could see, why do I love them? What resources do they have that they could offer? Why would they be interested in an event like this? Why would they care to support me or to support that vision? What words do they speak about it? What angle will they have? What technical support or strategies could they offer? And it was useful for that day, and it has been useful ever since. I never threw away my squad list. I hung it in my office. So then if I need another event or something to reach out to, I've got it. But more so, it offers me this like spiritual support to remember that I'm so not in it alone. I'm bound to others in my community, and they're real life people. It's not a concept. Yeah.
My squad, my sisterhood, really. I look at us as like trees. Sometimes we're just fertile with seeds, putting out in the world. Hopefully they take root and plant. But our roots, we're connected by our shared stories and our shared work, and we strengthen one another. It's funny how science is like, hey, there's this little tree, and these trees are sending it, nutrients. And I'm like, that's how we work. Indigenous people knew that forever, hey, finally catching on with what we say. But I think of this sisterhood, and I'm trying to put some brothers in there too, You guys are hard to work with, dudes. Just come in, you can do it this way. No.
I like your dude impression.
My dude impression. I can't tell. I've actually tried to use mansplainers in my work more effectively. So if I say something and I can bring a white mansplainer in, it makes sense for the white people. So in a way, I've co-opted a proper messenger for the white people to hear their own stuff, their reflection. But really, my squad, I feel, is, my sisters, we're not always together. I mean, even Theresa and I met Theresa, 10 years ago, maybe more. And her fire kind of scared me in a way, because she was like, yeah, let's burn this thing down. And I'm like, let's softer approach. But, we work well together, we work well together. But we don't see each other often. And when we do, it's picking up where we left off, and taking those moments just to be with one another, and share what we know, and that sisterhood grows. People come into our lives for however brief or for however long. Who knew that we meet one time in a dingy restaurant in Bismarck, North Dakota, and 10, 12 years later, however long it's been, we're still happy to see one another. Because our heart's connected, and my soul is like, where have you been all my life? It's those roots of those trees of our ancestors connecting us and pushing us forward, and the seeds remembering that we're connected to those roots. And we just want to survive and love one another and be ourselves. So my squad is always growing. And they're useful because sometimes my squad knows that I travel so much, and they're like, hey, we got a room for you. Hey, we have a meal for you. Come in and celebrate with us. Or, hey, come in and speak and share some of your wisdom here. And we're not going to take away from your energy, but we want you to share and then build with ours, So my sisterhood is mindful, too, that this life I chose to step into is taking away my energy. But they know how to replenish it, and that's celebrating with one another, going away with one another, doing ceremony with one another, singing with one another. The life of consent too. Like, can I give you a hug? Can I share this space with you? And that invitation is also incredibly powerful. Do you want to come with us? Do you want to share this meal? We're gonna go here and sit in the cedars. I'm down for sitting in the cedars. I'm down for that. Let's be by the water. Or do you want to be alone right now? It's like, yep. Hate everybody. My sisters know that, right? So yeah, I'm still trying to work in those brothers, trying to do that. But right now it's the sisterhood and the ancestry of that sisterhood that give me life, and that is my squad, and they're all over. I can, they're running for office, they're leaders of tribal colleges, they're taking the strength of the autonomy of who we are as women and leveraging that, they're enduring, we endure, but we're also claiming that power and doing new things for us that are actually old things, but we're like, get out of here, patriarchy. So brothers, if you're willing to come in, you got to build that trust with us, and that's hard for me. I admit that it's hard for me to build trust with men. So my sisterhood, my squad.
I love that. It's so interesting because I think me and Prairie Rose get along so well because we're so opposite, and we like fill in. I was really thinking, I'm like, oh my God, who's my squad? I was like trying to think of names, right? And then I just had this like aha of Facebook is my squad, literally. Like I use Facebook as my my friends. So when you're a workaholic and a single parent, like your time is, once you get done with your task, then you're a parent. And so I literally use Facebook as my social time. And I use that. And I don't accept people who aren't like-minded. I'm a little judgmental in that way. I'm working on it, right? And so people are pissy all the time on Facebook, I delete them. Get rid. I ain't got time for that. Like, even if you're my cousin, 'cause I don't care. Like, no. And if you never have anything positive to say about me, I'm deleting you too. 'Cause like, I ain't got time for that, And so you control that space. I control, and so I don't debate people on my post. If you disagree with my political stances, I delete you, which isn't so great for building allies, but that's not what that's for. My Facebook's my Facebook, and so I've just really appreciate that space, right? And because if anyone has read the book, Children of Alcoholics, you know that growing up with a parent who's alcoholic, drug addict, whatever, asking for help is like impossible. It's actually conditioned into us not to reach out, not to ask, because we're going to fix it. Like, we're the fixer, so we come in and fix everything. And so being able to ask people for help, asking them for prayers, asking for guidance is hard. And so when I was 23, I decided I was no longer going to make friends. And because literally they all died. Like, they're just dying, from suicide, lots of suicide, to drinking and driving, to whatever. And there was just this moment where I was done. And I was no longer going to make friends because it wasn't safe to make friends. And especially when you grow up in a small community and you've known them for, your whole life. And I was just really angry about that. And I was the opposite, where I found guy friends are safer than women. Because women, we carry our trauma, we carry our hurt and pain, and I got enough. I can't carry somebody else's, And so I actually had way more guy friends because I could trust them. They didn't come with the pain and hurt, and it was easier. But I also surround myself with front layer where we don't go in depth. Right? As long as you don't go in depth, I don't go in depth, we don't have to get serious about like anything. And so you create that layer of people who are support. And when you're trying to do social change and social justice, you have to depend on people. And when you're not okay with your own trauma, it is so hard to depend on people. And it's so hard to give up a little of that work and say, okay, here's your role, you're responsible, when you know the outcome will fall back on you. And so trusting is a huge issue for us. And trusting then makes us have to do it all ourselves, which we overdo it because we don't need to. Because if you can trust in your squad and trust in people's professional abilities to create a team, then you're so much better off. And so some of that, it's just been profound for me because it all keeps coming back to wellness. I'm only as good as I can be. I can only change me. I can only impact myself to be a better human being and a healthier human being, and not pass on cattiness, not pass on gossip, not pass on bad traits. I'm only accountable to me. And so when you embrace that and say, okay, but you can be a part of a team and you can do that and build a team, that's where the real movement happens. And so when we get out of our own way and get out of our own ideas and to build that squad is when change agents happen. And there is so much work that needs to be done that it's impossible for one of us to do it. We have to have help. We have to have a squad. And so I'm just so thankful because that's what this is. And so being able to have these kind of conferences, we build our squad and we build those and say, hey, I see all the work you're doing. Keep it up. Take a break. It's okay. Time out. And keep being fierce, though, and keep pushing through. And that's just the beautiful part of who we are as Indigenous people.
Beautiful. So much love for these ladies, so much love. I didn't even know what they were going to talk about. I just knew it would be awesome. So we realized there's been a lot of sitting and listening. We wanted to open it up and see if there were any questions of you to them before we pose a dialogue question for your table.
Oh, we covered it, see? Yeah.
Okay, coming back to Joel.
I just want to say, Akall'eq, thank you very much for sharing. And one of the things that I've been sitting here pondering about is the age divide. And it's one of the things to relate a little bit of the intention of the question is I count some of my closest friends in their 70s, and it's a little terrifying, again, with making friends who are on the later stages of life, because we're human. And I try not to take that for granted, that I have the opportunity to work with amazing people. I also work with children, which are in that same zone of there's a clock ticking on how long you're a child in the age sense. And so the links between age gaps and how that has affected your work, and maybe some of the perspectives on navigating the social justice topic, and how allies, intergenerational allying, or what this kind of as a thinking about this from that perspective.
So going back to my scary grandma, my entire life I've searched for grandmothers and aunties. So everywhere I go, I will find them out in the crowd and latch onto them, even if it's for a hug. And I have 4 sisters. We started doing canoe journey, and our goal was to find grandparents. Seriously. And one of us would be like, oh my God, I found this amazing grandpa. I'm like, where? Let's go find him. And we would literally just be like, will you be our grandpa now? Sounds a little desperate, but when you don't have healthy choices at home, you have to go find them. And so I think that's appropriate. I really do. I think that's just how we always are. We've always searched out that wisdom, love, and guidance. Whatever we're missing, we search it out and we find it. And sometimes it's not in our age gap, which is totally okay, because I relate to children really well. I get bossed around by elders really well, and we're just flexible that way. And so I think that's a natural progression. Sometimes I have more problem with people my age because I want them to do more. And I want them to be more engaged, and they're just doing life. And I'm like, no, it's not enough to just do life. We have to be thriving. We can't just be surviving, And so I just think it's so appropriate. And whenever we realize there's not multiple generations of age in the work we're doing, we should be thinking of inviting them into it, because it should be all aspects of ages in the work we're doing, because that knowledge is spread throughout the generations. And so I just think it's so important we have that collective age differences in the work.
I don't know where I gave myself the authority to give people permission, but I did. Because I find myself working in structures where we've got power dynamics in play and people try to hold on to that power. And so I found myself, being the one who goes up to the older generation and be like, have you thought about retiring? What do you want to do in retirement? Trying to get them to think outside of like holding on to their power and their place. And like, they're like, I'm the only one who can do this. I've been doing it for 50 years and I have to do it forever, and I'm like, no, you don't, Yeah, build a legacy. And how we think about the future, for the next 10,000 years. So not all those are indigenous structures. I love the work that I did at our tribal college, especially around food and food sovereignty, because after the flooding of our bottomlands in 1953, we then had generations now that don't know that if you plant a bean, beans will grow, and kernel corn will grow, right? Like we disconnected, we didn't even disconnect, we severed our food knowledge by the flooding of our people and forcing people into schools. And so when I was at our tribal college, fortunately, my father taught us how to grow our own food. We were poor, so we grew like 60% of our food sometimes, foraged, we were the family. If there was a roadkill, like fresh roadkill, they'd be like, Delbert, there's a deer over by Highway 53 sign, and he'd go and get it. We'd had 2 deer hanging in our basement, that's just the way our family was. So I was gifted with kind of this knowledge of like how to feed our family, and moving back to the reservation. So many people my age didn't have that knowledge. So I would call in our elders to teach some of that, and I would, work with our Boys and Girls Club and teach the kids those types of things. So that intergenerational relationship was starting to be reestablished, right? Moving out of my comfortable community to do the work that I do now and have done often throughout my life, it's kind of the organizing model of like looking at who's making the decisions here. Are those decisions helpful, right? Are they actually creating a good working dynamic with the mission that these organizations are trying to do? We got 75-year-olds saying, I got 10 more good years. Like, no, retire, enjoy life. But that's what they like, because they don't know anything else but that power hold. They know nothing else but that power hold. So I find my place often being the one to give rooms permission to do something different and to find what gives them joy and do that. So it's the work that I do now, though, it's tough to get young people involved in, because I don't know. I shouldn't say I don't know. I haven't had the opportunity to give space to young people to figure out how they want to connect with this work. And that's my own fault. I just haven't had time. So if you have time to work with young people to figure out how their solutions are going to be, and don't be the adult who's like, well, we tried that, so it doesn't work. Let them learn it. They'll figure it out. And so by the time they're our age, they can say, well, we tried it this way. And whatever they learned, let them move forward. Because I've been in rooms too where we have the adults who are like, we tried that, or they're funding driven, right? Like, well, we got this grant, we're going to do it this way because this is what the funding provides. What are the little wiggle room areas that we can try something else, right? So I'm that person too. It's like, oh, that's the methodology. Well, we're going to find some wiggle room and do it this way. Still works. You said you just needed this. At the end of the day, we have that, but we're also doing all this. So building those relationships and power dynamics, we have to be intentional about that work, and remind ourselves too, because we still default to the models that we were taught. And even though we've known some of those models don't work, we have to give our permissions to get out of those models, and it's hard to do. So we have to remind ourselves, like, okay, is this working? No, it hasn't for 50 years. That's why these people are still in power. So break it down, burn it down, start something new. So.
Does that answer your?
Did you address it in any way?
I'd just say food. Food brings everyone together across ages. So I don't want to take up too much more time, but I'd be happy to talk more about intergenerational movement building later. Joel?
All right. Well, I don't know what else to say, but Qoyana, you filled our cups. You've shared so much. So many gifts were given through the power of your stories, your sharing, your laughter, your tears. This is what healing looks like, people, right? This is what healing looks like. So Qoyana, for bringing that healing, sharing your journey a little bit with us. Now I want to know so much more, but we have time for that. So at your tables, if you haven't already, please introduce yourselves. And we want to ask you to share a little bit about who is your squad, who is your social justice family, and how do we become a part of it. So this is a chance for you to share a little bit about who you are, why you showed up, what you're about. And we'll do this for about 15 minutes. And if you haven't already, please help yourself to lunch. Looks like many of you already got some. Hope it's good. And again, Qoyana Jaknak to these warrior women up here with me. If we can give them one more round of applause.